So I finally saw Lady Bird, directed by Greta Gerwig, the actress who is probably best known for working with Noah Baumbach, the director of The Squid and the Whale, Kicking and Screaming, Francis Ha. He's a director that I like and dislike, depending on the movie. Some of his movies I think are really good. Some of his other films I think are just like overrated trash, trying hard to be Woody Allen. Occasionally he'll make a really inspired movie within that genre. The Squid and the Whale is fantastic, and I don't think he's quite been able to top it. But this isn't about him. This is about her movie. So I first found Greta Gerwig a few years ago. God, we're going back to like probably 2011 here, and I just read about her in some newspaper stuff and following some film festivals and scenes like that, and I'd seen some of interviews with her and on YouTube and stuff like that. I didn't really see her perform too much, but she was an actress that kind of got on my nerves. So it's weird to review this movie because this movie's kind of, well, it's not kind of, it feels totally about her life going to a Catholic school. And that moment right before you leave to go to college, and you have that weird moment where you're kind of losing your friends, and things are changing, and you're feeling certain emotions for the first time, and you feel disconnected from your family and so on. So it's tough for me to review this film because I'm not a fan of Greta Gerwig as a person, and not even as a person, just her personality. She annoys the hell out of me. How she talks, how she, like, smiles, how she does that laugh. Like, I can't watch Frances Ha anymore. I saw Frances Ha twice. First I watched it, and I kind of liked it. I was like, oh, you're doing, like, Woody Allen. Okay, you're doing, the old black and white retro thing. I got it. Oh, you're playing Bowie while she runs on the streets. Cool. And then I watched it the second time, and I hated it. I thought it was very obvious and more like a student film than I saw the first time. I still don't know how some people love that movie. Frances Ha is like this loved, critically acclaimed movie that everyone says is amazing, and I've seen so many films that do exactly what Frances Ha does and do it so much better, but I don't know, Frances Ha is the one that broke out doing the like, hey, let's go film a person in their 20s in black and white hanging out in New York and stuff like that. It's like, oh my god, this has been done 1,000 times. Once again, I'm getting off track, but what I'm trying to get at here is that she bothers me. I do not like her mannerisms or anything, so she annoys me. Now, that is not saying she's a bad actress. I actually think she's a pretty good actress. She's natural. She doesn't have to put a lot of effort in. It feels like it just happens. And I'm sure she is working really hard, but part of what makes her a good actress is that it doesn't really feel that way. It feels like she's just being herself on camera. But God, every time I've seen her in anything, there was that, what was that, 20th Century, was she in that movie, the 20th Century Women, or Woman, I think it was called? Man, that movie too. So I wasn't too excited about Lady Bird. I really wasn't. Now, the critics have loved this movie. This film has 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's one of the best reviewed films of the year, like top 3 to 5. Right now, it's getting traction to win Best Picture. I mean, it got the SAG nomination for Ensemble. It's got the Golden Globe nominations. It's been winning critics awards all over the place. I mean, I wouldn't rule this film out for winning Best Picture or Best Actress for Saoirse Ronan. And it's definitely going to win Best Supporting Actress. That seems like a lock at this point. So Lady Bird has momentum. It's definitely, I mean, it's making money. It's made $30 million at the box office. It's released by A24, who releases very low-budget movies. So my fear with this movie is that because it was about her as a teenager, played by Saoirse Ronan, I thought, oh my god, I hate Greta Gerwig as an adult. I can't stand her in movies now. How can I stand to see her as a teenager? There's just no way. There's no way I'm going to be able to enjoy that. It's just going to kill me. So I was thinking maybe I should avoid this movie for a little while. But now that it's come around my area, I kind of have to go see it because I don't get a lot of opportunities to go see movies like this, so I had to drive to go see Lady Bird. Just because the reviews were so great, I kept hearing it was like the best coming-of-age film in years, and it was, I heard comparisons to Rushmore, Wes Anderson's film, and I was hearing, I was just hearing it was great. So I thought, you know what, I typically agree with critics. I usually like the movies that people say are great in that regard. I mean, I'm not always on the bandwagon, but this seems appropriate, so I went to go see Lady Bird. It's So, do I like the movie? Actually, yes. Um, and I say that to the movie's credit because I went in not wanting to like the movie. I didn't go in with low expectations. I just went in expecting to be annoyed by it. And even the first, I don't know, 10 minutes, I was getting worried. Like, really worried. When this movie started, I was like, oh no, this is Juno. This is fucking Juno. And I'm sorry, I can't sit through another Juno. I had to go see Juno 3 times when it came out in 2007. 3 times. 2 of those times I didn't want to go see it. I saw it the first time because I kind of like Jason Reitman, and I thought, oh, well, this movie looks pretty good, and people are saying it's good. And then I think I liked it the first time, but then I had to go see it again with a girlfriend and then another group of friends who were just like, dude, let's go see Juno. I'm like, I don't want to go see Honest to Blog again. Diablo Cody that won an Oscar. I mean, what the hell? So I'm sitting there watching this movie and I go, oh no, this is Juno. This is the quirky high school girl that's like mature well beyond her years. And no, this isn't Ghost World. Don't you dare compare this to Ghost World, okay? Ghost World is a brilliant criticism and realistic look at hipster chicks. It's not a celebration of hipster chicks. All right, Juno is a complete celebration of the hipster chick. Oh my god, that part in the movie where she talks about Dario Argento and Juno. Oh my god, stop it. And then, yeah, and then they talk about Argento just like he's a gore god, not because he's an artist. Like his films were just fun to watch because of the gore. That's the only reason you watch Suspiria. Ugh. Jason Bateman plays like one of the weirdest, cuckiest characters I've ever seen in that movie. So we're in this movie, and I'm like, oh no, this is the quirky high school girl who's smarter than everyone. She says everything to her parents. They don't understand. I mean, they're good people, but she's got this all figured out. And don't get me wrong, Juno was back in the day trying to look at the negatives and positives of Ellen Page's character. Like, it was trying to be balanced with everything. It was just, once again, it was so grating. This film, though, to Greta Gerwig's credit, won me over after a while. It didn't win me over right away. Like I said, the first part I wasn't enjoying it. I was like, this is just another indie film like this. Like, why do these films keep getting 98% on Rotten Tomatoes when everyone makes these movies? I've made this movie. I'm not kidding you. Like, it's this kind of thing, like the mom and daughter in the car having a conversation that's like 3 minutes long, and the conversation they have, it's like, I've seen this in 1,000 movies at film festivals. We've all done this. It's so simple and like it's so cliche at the same time. It drives me nuts that stuff like this somehow gets put on like a pedestal, like it's high art. And it's like, this is like the stuff you do when you're a starting out filmmaker, when you don't have a lot of mastery over different genres and locations and stuff like that, when you want to keep things small and you can make it relatable. So you go back to the tropes of high school movies and being a teenager, because a lot of that formula consistently works. And so that kind of bugged me. I was getting bugged by that early on, that this was so much like a lot of other coming-of-age films. In particular, it took a lot from Pretty in Pink. I don't know if that was intentional. But if you remember, Pretty in Pink was about a girl that was poor, even though she kind of just lives in a normal house. She's not really poor, she's just not rich. And then she tries to get in with the rich kids, and then she kind of puts her friends on the back burner, or mainly Ducky gets put on the back burner while she hangs out with Anthony Edwards, not Anthony Edwards, Andrew McCarthy, the wonderful Andrew McCarthy. How did I get him confused with Anthony Edwards? But Andrew McCarthy, and then, then she's like, hey, don't come to my house, which is actually a pretty nice house. And then the rich people hate her, and then she has to realize, like, oh, you know what, they are bad. I need to go back with Ducky. Except in Pretty in Pink, she ends up with the rich guy anyway, so, okay. At least that's most realistic depiction of a girl ever. Of a high school girl ever. I'm gonna go date the rich guy. Screw this. I mean, if Ducky was a bad boy, he might have had a better shot. God, it's been 10 minutes and I've hardly talked about this movie. There's just not a lot to say. It is what it is. Lady Bird is exactly what you think it's going to be, if you have any idea of what the kind of movie it is. If you hear the premise of it, Greta Gerwig, her as a teenager, and it's a high school movie, and it's set in like 2002, it's pretty much what you think it's going to be. What ended up winning me over to coming over on a positive, where I was kind of leaning negative, and I was going to do a negative review. I was feeling that while I was watching the movie, like, well, I'm going to be like, your movie sucks on this. He gave this a 6. And I was sitting there going, I kind of agree with him. This is like a 6. This isn't that great. It's decent. And I usually agree with Adam quite a bit. I watch a lot of his videos, and I think he has a pretty decent opinion on things. And I was like, yeah, he's pretty right. This is kind of overrated. But once again, movies are subjective, so you fall on different areas. I ended up getting won over by her direction. There was this moment in the theater. I was sitting there with my girlfriend, and I went, and she's like, "What? What, are you annoyed?" And I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "Why?" I said, "Because Greta Gerwig is a good director." Like, it annoyed me because I'm not in love with the cinematography of this movie. It's not bad, but it's okay. It's adequate. It's Noah Baumbach cinematographer. I'm not in love with the makeup or costume design, any of that. I'm not in love with the location of it. I do like that it's a period piece in 2002. I like that a lot because now I'm noticing something with these movies, and it was kind of catching on to me recently, the last few years, that there's period pieces now coming out about the early 2000s and mid 2000s. Like, it was always a period piece was either really, really old, or it was like, the 60s, 70s, or the 20s. But to be watching a film that is trying to capture what it was like in the early 2000s, I find that fascinating. I'm all about that with this movie. I love that the music is 2002. I love that people talk like it's 2002. I like that people dress and do things kind of like it's 2000. Like, that part to me was well done, very much so, because like I said, you get used to these cliches with period pieces and a lot of regular stuff. You kind of forget that every decade has its own identity, and a lot of us think with the 2000s that there's not a difference between the previous decade and the current decade. But there are differences. There's major differences, and this movie it at least shows some of those things, that it was a different time being a teenager then as to being a teenager now. So I respect that a lot, and that was a very clever choice. When I mean she's a good director, it's not maybe just being technically good. She's okay. She's no better than any other filmmaker I've seen at film festivals. I mean, she doesn't do much with the camera work or the editing or anything like that. It's pretty much just shot, go to another shot of someone. I mean, it's just these, it's just basic stuff. Wide shot, medium shots, close-ups. I mean, if you've made movies or you studied film, you've seen this stuff, and it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's pretty basic. But that doesn't mean a movie's bad. I mean, My Dinner with Andre is just two guys sitting at a table, and it's pretty much just cutting back and forth between them without much else, and it's a great movie. So you don't need that to be great. A director, though, is not just setting up shots and making a beautiful movie and creating that kind of editing and all that. That's part of it, for sure. That's a huge part. It's directing your actors and how they say their dialogue and the blocking of the scene, where the actors move, and how they play off each other. And in that regard, I think her background, which I'm assuming was in theater and more of that, and improv and a lot of things like that. And she did co-write Frances Ha, so this isn't her first time writing. That element really surprised me. I actually think Greta Gerwig's a very good director. I think it elevates this whole movie. That and the performances. The performances across the board are exceptional. Saoirse Ronan plays a better version of Greta Gerwig than herself, because all the things that I don't like about her, the flaws, it's almost like Saoirse Ronan can get into that part of it. She embraces the flaws. The things that I find kind of annoying about Greta Gerwig, she actually plays up those things as negatives. And that's how it's directed, too. See, I thought this film was just going to be praising this character named Christine, who wants everyone to call her Lady Bird, which was killing me. I hated that. Call me Lady Bird. And then she goes to a Catholic school, so I was assuming, okay, she's going to be an atheist, and she hates everyone at this school, and she's going to protest against the Catholic Church and all that, which, I'm not against, but I'm so sick of that stuff in movies. But it was a different time in 2002. It just even early on, like, she's writing something down, and one of her friends says, "What about the war on terrorism?" And she's like, "Don't vote Republican." She says a line like that, and then it's like, oh my god. And she meets this guy in a band that's, God, he's such a douche, and he talks about how it's saying, oh, the government's giving us phones so they can spy on us. And it's like, oh, wow, Greta Gerwig, that's really relevant. Yeah, amazing. But, like I said with direction, I thought this film was going to praise this character, or at least want you to love them. Now, a lot of people claim Juno and what Reitman and Diablo Cody were trying to do was be realistic with that character, but it's really not if you watch Juno more than once. The first initial viewing, you might take that. But the more you watch Juno, you realize this film is designed very much so to absolutely praise this character and build this character up. And the proof's in the pudding that when that movie came out, everyone loved Juno, the character, and Ellen Page. Now think about how much that movie's talked about today, or Jason Reitman's career where it's at, where his career is pretty much in the toilet. He hasn't had a film do well critically or financially in years since Up in the Air. And he hasn't had, and Ellen Page's career has been off and on, Michael Cera. Now that's not, that's whatever, that doesn't mean they're untalented. I like Michael Cera and all that, but it's just showing you that movie really didn't hold up for a lot of people. It was a classic when it came out because people bought into it. They bought into Juno. And I thought this film was going to try to manipulate you to love Lady Bird, to love this Christine character. And I didn't like her. I didn't think she was like a bad person. She's not a bad person. I just felt like she was being really selfish, and she was ignoring a lot of stuff going on, and she was, which is normal for teenagers. I was that way when I was 17, but it's not always fun to watch. And she goes to hang out with this kid who's rich and the other rich kids and this rich girl, and she lies about where she lives. And she quits hanging out with her fat friend because she wants to go be popular and all that, and she's turned on by this other guy. And, that stuff was so cliche, and I wasn't really into it. But luckily, once again, the movie responds to that by saying the character is making these mistakes. In my opinion, that's how I took it. And at the end of the movie, what I thought was great, and I won't spoil it, but the character makes a decision at the end when she's asked something. And the answer she gives, to me, showed that because to me, Lady Bird was all about ego and being absorbed. And then at the end, what she chooses to do kind of shows you how she doesn't see things that way anymore. And kind of the final moment of the movie, I thought was almost like note perfect. Even there's an epilogue to this movie. There's like a final few minute epilogue that's kind of separate from the rest of the movie. And I thought that saved the whole movie for me. Because to me, at the end, I go, okay, now I kind of get it. This was about you looking back at yourself as a teenager and you feeling bad about how much your father and mother went through for you to have what you wanted, and you didn't really appreciate what they were going through. For whatever reason, you're just emotionally detached, you're confused, you're too quirky to see the world in a real way. But now you're looking back as an adult, feeling upset, and you made this movie almost like an apology to your parents, or asking for forgiveness on some level. This movie almost felt like Greta Gerwig confessing and being guilty about how she handled some of this stuff. And I thought that was really honest, and I respected that. And I'm glad that she didn't make this movie a thing where you're just supposed to fall in love with this quirky lead character, because I would have not liked it had it been that way. But she doesn't ignore the flaws of this character, of Christine. She doesn't ignore the mistakes she makes. She doesn't ignore that not everyone enjoys being around her all the time. Sometimes people kind of say to her, like, why did you say it that way? Why are you being this way, And those were all really, really good choices. So I'm overall very happy with the lead character, because she was flawed, and the director, being self-aware of her own flaws, and as a writer, and the flaws of this character, made the character feel more real, where I never felt like Juno felt like a real person at all. She never felt like a real person. This feels like a real person. And if the movie is a character study and a coming-of-age film, it all comes down to the lead character and how they are handled. And I thought in that regard that Greta Gerwig did a great job directing Saoirse Ronan's performance and having her play off other people and do subtle work with just her body, how she lays around, how she sets. It's all the stuff that would annoy me if it wasn't real, because I know Greta Gerwig's this way, so it's not like they wrote this character to be a quirky movie character. This is how she really acts and is. She does act this way in real life. You see her in interviews act this way. So the fact she did such an honest depiction of herself, I thought was great, and I really, once again, I thought that was a great element. The movie gets better, I thought. I thought after the first 20 minutes or so, I thought it started to get really good. I think, like I said, well directed. The way the actors all play off each other, there's these scenes where she joins a theater group. And, they're at a Catholic school, so they're probably doing Godspell or something like that. But they all get together, and those scenes are some of my favorite scenes in the movie. And I also like the movie this year, Wonder, was directed by Steven Chbosky. And I'm starting to find a thread in movies I like this year, and it's optimism. It's movies that are nice about people and being forgiving and learning to move on and stuff like that. And that was a thread in this movie too I was not expecting. Let's go back to the Catholic thing. I thought, like I said, that her character was going to be hardcore atheist and all that, which I wouldn't have disliked. I'm not religious myself, but it just gets a little annoying. We've seen that before. One of the best things about this movie, it never does that. It never does that. In fact, Lady Bird likes the nun at the school. She's actually cool. All the teachers are nice, cool people. They're good people. The movie's saying, like, hey, not everyone who's Catholic is evil and bad. These are all good people. They're good teachers. She feels bad that she doesn't, appreciate them or even tell them, like, hey, I'm sorry that I did these things, because she has these little moments where she tries to break out. But it's really just about trying to form yourself who you are, an identity crisis. She just ladybird because she can't figure out who she is. So she's trying all these things, trying to find herself, trying to be who she is. She says at one point, her mom says to her, she goes, I just want you to be the best version of yourself you can be. And she says, what if this is the best version? And her mom just kind of looks at her like, well, yeah, that sucks. Those little honest moments are so nice because that is kind of what it's like. I'm trying to be a better version of myself, but what if I can't be any better than this? What if I'm just mediocre? What if I'm just average and boring like everyone else? There's nothing that interesting about me. So she hangs out with this group. She gets a boyfriend in the theater group. I won't spoil what happens with that. I actually like the plot twist they do with that too. So all that stuff's really great. Her going and trying out the audition scenes feel very realistic. There's a scene where they're all in a circle and they all have to who cries first. Whoever can cry first wins. It's this acting technique. And the guy who's teaching the class, he cries first. And he's genuinely upset. And they talk about how maybe his son died or something like that. And I don't know, there's just moments like that. There's moments of humanity for everyone. I can't say how much I respect that she did that she didn't villainize the like priests or the nuns. She didn't make them evil, bad people or antagonistic. Everyone wants to help Lady Bird in this movie. Her dad wants to help her, her mother wants to help her. Her brother who's dating this girl and they're kind of like, I don't know what they are. They're just kind of like these hipster kids who live in the house. I'm assuming the brother was adopted. I think they say that in the dialogue because he doesn't have the same skin tone as everyone else in the family. Yeah, I'm thinking he was adopted and his girlfriend's living there after she had trouble with her mother. But man, that stuff is, I like that a lot. I like the stuff with the mother and her friends coming to hang out and being around the mother a lot. That's my favorite part of the movie is the mom and the daughter playing off each other. Then the friends coming over. There's a scene where they all come over and they're high. They smoked pot, and they have the munchies, and she comes in. And she acts really cool. She acts like a mom really acts in those situations, in my opinion, what it's really like. And those moments feel real. Or when a young guy tells a girl that he loves her and he respects her so much, and that's why he doesn't want to do stuff with her. That sounds like something a teenage boy would say who's not confident and doesn't really know how to talk to girls yet. Those are very genuine. They feel like real moments. I like the friend that she has, even though I think it's used in a very generic way in the plot. I do like her best friend. I love the dad character. I thought the dad character was great because he was just so tragic because his life had clearly went to hell. And, honestly, it doesn't get any better. His life's still kind of crappy at the end, but he takes it in stride, which I respect when anyone does that. Laurie Metcalf as the mom, who, God, she's been around forever. I've always been a fan of her. She was, honestly, going back to a kid, she was always, like, one of the best parts of the stuff she was involved with as an actress on sitcoms and stuff like that in movies. She's someone that has been in stuff I hate, and she's great in it. I believe she's won a couple Emmys. I've always been a fan, though. I mean, who isn't? She has it. She can act. If you don't like her as an actress, I don't know what you think good acting is. The woman can act. She's a great comedic actress. Her performance is transcendent. It makes the movie. If she wasn't in it, the movie would be a lot more shallow and a lot more cliche, but she brings such a next level kind of performance and focus and emotion to the movie that it would, like I said, it would be more forgettable, but God, she really stands out. Odd thing is, I'm going to do a review for Call Me By Your Name here really soon, and when I saw this movie, I hadn't seen Call Me By Your Name yet, and I didn't realize that the kid in the band was Timothée Chalamet. And then later on, when I saw Call Me By Your Name, it didn't occur to me it was the same guy until I went and looked up later. And I go, wait, that was him. Because he has a very recognizable face and hair and all that, but I don't know why I didn't see it was him. Because, I mean, he has a different haircut, but you could tell it's him, so that was weird to me. So kudos to him. Even though it's kind of a similar performance, he probably gave my best not my best, but my favorite performance of the year was Timothée Chalamet in Call Me By Your Name, which I cannot wait to review. And the problem is, once you see that movie, a lot of praise for this movie, for me, kind of fell back down, because Call Me By Your Name does so much of the same stuff that this movie's doing, and it does it on such a higher level. It's more accomplished, it's better, and in my opinion, in like every way, it's better than this. I mean, it's about a gay romance, but it's also a coming-of-age film. It's more of a coming-of-age film than it gets credit for. It's more about a childhood, well, teenage life going into adulthood. But love me some Timothée Chalamet. I've never heard of this guy, and he is so good. But in this movie, it's the mom and it's their relationship and how that builds for a dramatic ending. That all really worked for me. I'm glad that Greta Gerwig embraced the flaws of the character. I'm glad that she tried to make the flaws as endearing as the positives, because when you like someone and you kind of mesh with them and get along with them, they have flaws, but you like those flaws. Those flaws can become a part of them that you really associate with them, that makes it familiar and enjoyable to be around them. That's what she's trying to go for here. And by the end, I did like Christine and feel more, I did like her a little bit more, and I felt like she was more interesting and cool. And she's never too mean. She's just a little distant to people. She seems a little bit too self-centered, but she's not a mean person, which I really like. This movie's not mean. It has so many cliche moments, like, you know, rich kids being douchebags, or you know, losing your virginity not being the way you want it to go. But she doesn't handle those scenes in a mean way. They're done in a very nice, cool way, kind of, where people are considerate of each other's feelings and they talk things out. Even when she's shown to be deceiving one of the girls, subterfuge, that she lies about where she lives. The girl's really not mean about it. She's actually really nice to her and listens to her, and they don't fight about it. And it's like, oh. And yeah, that's the most positive thing in this movie, is that she embraces the flaws of the lead character, and that she is not mean-spirited towards anyone in this movie or any type of group of person. So she's not pushing a message. This movie does not preach to you. It just shows you life and says, hey, you don't have to be a jerk. And flaws aren't always that people are a-holes. Sometimes a flaw is just that, you know, you can't be considerate of everyone all the time, and you just do things because they feel right. That doesn't necessarily make them right until retrospect. You get clarity later in life to kind of look back and see where you made a lot of mistakes. And I think that was what she was doing with this movie, was her kind of going back and looking at herself and trying to find, like, where was those moments when I really kind of discovered myself and realized that a lot of what I was doing was full of shit, and I was trying to be something I wasn't, and I wasn't. There's a lot of things to go into. It's a funny movie. There's a lot of great comedy. There's a lot of great dialogue, actually. It's a very funny, well-written movie. If you're just talking dialogue interaction. It's got that kid from Manchester by the Sea in it. I like this movie. I had a good time. I thought it was very entertaining. After the first, the first 20 minutes, they're not bad. I just got, like, the opening scene, she jumps out of a car and, like, breaks her arm. Like, her mom's yelling at her and she jumps out of a car. That drove me nuts. I was like, oh, I'm sure that even really happened, but it's just like, ugh. But there's these great scenes, like, where they're in a thrift shop and they're arguing, and then mid-argument they start talking about how much they love a dress. And that's exactly what I've seen girls and their mothers be. It could be that way with the parent. You could be in a fight with your family member, and then midway into a fight, you just have a normal conversation, and the fight doesn't happen. Because when you're family, that happens. When you're friends with someone. So there's moments in this movie where people start to yell at each other and get all tense, and then they just kind of move on because they don't want to focus on that too long. There's other stuff to talk about. That was great too. So overall, very good movie. Impressive directorial debut. She's a much better director than I would have thought. I think the direction makes the movie, and her direction of these actors and how she kind of puts them together in the movie. Not necessarily the film itself, but it's got a decent script, and she knows if she can get these performances right and she can get the tone right, she has a movie. And that's really what makes the movie, instead of some brilliant kind of structure or editing and stuff like that. I don't think it'll get a lot of technical nominations at the Academy Awards, and I don't think it deserves them. But once again, that's not what makes a movie great or not. I certainly don't see the Rushmore. I mean, kind of, but not really. I saw more Pretty in Pink than anything, which is actually one of my least favorite John Hughes movies. But that's what it reminded me of, is that she was doing like a Pretty in Pink for the 2000s. Seeing it as a period piece, though, that's what made it interesting. I think if it didn't have that, it was kind of that Boyhood thing. It was going back and looking at that and being like, oh yeah, we did all talk that way and listen to this stuff. And there was just this attitude about things back then. Timothy Chalamet plays the most annoying character ever in this movie, and that bothered me, but we'll just... whatever. Yeah, God, that character. Oh my God. You'll see, when you see it, you know what I'll talk about. Oh my, the stuff he says in this movie. But once again, the flaws that he has, the stupid stuff he's saying, there's truth to it, but it's also silly how he's saying it, how he's conveying it, and she kind of makes fun of that too. So it's a self-aware movie, as much as it is a film trying to get you to kind of subtly fall in love with its world and characters. But I didn't fall in love with it, but I admired it, and I did like its message, and I did like it, her character arc, and I thought it all comes together pretty well, except for all that cliche stuff, like with the friend and all that, and the rich kids. All that stuff kind of hurts the movie. It always has a sense of humor. It never gets too serious, and it never gets too goofy or absurd. So it kind of stays in that right middle ground. That's the way I like my teenage indie films like this, you know. I think Perks of Being a Wallflower was a much better movie than this, and deserved a lot of the acclaim that this movie seems to just be getting all across the board, where it's like a masterpiece. I don't think it's a masterpiece. I don't even get what critics are seeing with that, honestly, at all. It's just a you know, it's a decent movie, and there's not much more than that. My arbitrary rating for Lady Bird is a 7.5 out of 10, I guess. Yeah, I'll give it a 7.5. Because I don't want to quite give it an 8, because I don't think it's right at that place. I mean, overall, I probably enjoyed it like an 8, but I don't think it's above a 7.5. Let's say like a 7.8. I don't know. It's like a 7.8 out of 10. So, yeah, I like Lady Bird. The biggest surprise is that I like it for me, because I really thought I was going to hate this movie. So it's to credit her as a filmmaker and her screenplay and all that. The fact that she got someone like me to like this movie, someone who was not a fan of her and her personality, and the way she acts and stuff. Which that's not me. I'm not being mean. That's just, you know, I don't. You know, some people annoy you. She annoys me, Greta Gerwig. She just does, but that's fine. I would never be mean to her or say that to her if I ever met her at a film festival or something and be like, hey, I hate how you act, you know? A lot of people annoy me that are famous. It doesn't, you know, that... But the fact that she made me like her movie, that she made a movie that I ended up liking about her anyway and all that, and that's great. Yeah, and then it wasn't another Juno. There's just something about this movie that is... It's not as just immediately in your face as a lot of those other indie coming-of-age films or movies that are trying to be about these quirky teenagers like this, or a quirky girl. It doesn't just grab you like those other ones does. It just kind of does it in a more like, hey, this is what it's like, you know, these people exist. I know these people exist. Let's make a movie about one of these characters, and hey, if you like the movie, then, you know. And I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. So, like, comment, and subscribe. And please rewind your VHS tapes before you bring them back into the store. I don't want to have to do it. Like, at all. And you're a jerk if you do that. How dare you? And I don't want to hear that crap that it's 2017 and people don't have VHS tapes anymore. Except that's true. I hate my life.